Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Kim Ki-won, Richgo. All right, this is the first day shoot of 2025. I wish everyone a lot of luck in the new year. And above all, I think health is really important. So, I sincerely support you in making 2025 a year where you work hard and exercise for your health. I also did some morning swimming this morning. I really think morning swimming is great. So these days it's the beginning of the year, and I've noticed that there's a really hot issue going on. What this means is that we're about to have an early presidential election. So where are they going to move the presidential office? That's right. So the issue surrounding this is really hot right now. This morning, I searched for related keywords. I found a lot of articles on the topic. The discussion is about moving the presidential office to Sejong. Sejong's real estate market surged. Here's data. Sejong. The transaction price index for Sejong. Also, there are claims that the next presidential office is best suited for Sejong. And as you all remember, the real estate market was really hot in 2020 and 2021. And the place that saw the biggest increase was Sejong. Let me show you some data on this. Now, if you look at this, this is the actual transaction price index data for apartments in Sejong. So among the official data from the Korea Real Estate Agency, this actual transaction price index is the one that best represents the current price trends in the apartment market. If you look at this, you can see that there was a significant surge in 2020. So among the official data from the Korea Real Estate Agency, the actual transaction price index is the one that best shows the current price trends in the apartment market. Now, if you look at this, there was indeed a significant surge in 2020. At that time, low point was 97.8%. The peak is around 172. In just about a year, or a little over a year, the prices skyrocketed by more than 70% in that area. And as you remember, the bubble formed the fastest here. For most areas, the peak was around September to December of 2021, but for Sejong, the peak was in June 2021, and then it started to drop. But why did the apartment prices in Sejong rise so much at that time? Of course, during that time, due to the shockwaves from COVID-19, interest rates dropped significantly and market liquidity increased, causing real estate prices to soar nationwide. But what was happening in Sejong? Right, there was issue of relocating the administrative capital. So, in a way, just like we have theme stocks in the stock market, there are also theme stocks in the real estate market, but I think the only real theme stock is Sejong. There's no other real estate area that has such a strong and significant theme like Sejong. Now, with the upcoming early presidential election, what's happening again? But I think the only real theme stock is Sejong. There's no other real estate area that has such a strong and significant theme like Sejong. So, with the upcoming early presidential election, what's happening? Again, in the real estate sector, there's talk about setting up the presidential office in Sejong. But things aren't looking too good for Sejong right now. Sejong and Daejeon, which is right next to it, are somewhat connected. I'm not sure how far this will go, but if these discussions are taken seriously, I think it could have a huge impact on the real estate markets in Sejong and Daejeon. Let's take a look at some related articles. So, this article is from Mail Business newspaper. So the content is that the next presidential office will be in Sejong. The warrior is useless. Then there's the argument against the Blue House. This means there are counter-arguments being made against these discussions. This is a proposal that was made starting from the first day of the new year, suggesting that we should open the era of the presidential office in Sejong City to complete the administrative capital for balanced national development. So, due to the emergency situation and the impeachment phase, the political schedule, including the early presidential election, is rapidly changing. The realistic alternative right now is to completely relocate the presidential office, Sejong. This is the argument being made. So, if we hold an early presidential election, the next president is expected to be elected in 2025. That means the presidential office will need to be set up somewhere, right? But it's not appropriate to use the presidential office in Yongsan right now. Then, in the case of the Blue House, they opened it up, right? This will raise security and protection issues again, so the president's Sejong office should be converted into the first office. If you listen to the story, there are some parts you can understand to some extent. I'm really curious about what you all think. It would be great if you could leave your comments. In the first place, the idea of moving the presidential office out of the Blue House and setting it up in a different region seems like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it? That's a huge cost, right? Right. I heard that moving the office from the Blue House to Yongsan was really tough for the staff because there were so many logistical issues and a lack of infrastructure. So, if the president changes, who would want to use that office in Yongsan, right? The Yongsan office, right? But what does this mean on a national level? This is all about the costs. So, that's what I think. Even though the president is the highest ruler of the country, shouldn't we prevent the president from suddenly taking this out of the Blue House and moving Yongsan based on his personal thoughts? Because this cost is all tied to the taxes paid by the citizens. And we are making significant decisions that will impact the future of our country for 50 or even 100 years. So while I don't know how future decisions will unfold, it would be great if we could ensure that these decisions are not just based on the thoughts of a specific individual, but rather something that the public can sufficiently empathize with and accept. This isn't just about using the office while I'm president, it's about considering the long-term future of South Korea. It would be really nice if we could think through these aspects thoroughly. So, if you continue to look at the content, the political sphere is urging that the complete relocation of the National Assembly to Sejong should be presented as a promise, and they are calling for the declaration of the opening of the presidential era in Sejong as a symbolic step towards completing the administrative capital. This is the organization, and in reality, within the political sphere, there are already voices calling for President Yoon to return to the Blue House after he was impeached on the 14th. So, if a new president comes in, shouldn't we go back to the Blue House? But this isn't easy either. So, what did Hong Jun-pyo, the current mayor of Daegu, say? President Yoon's most critical mistake is the relocation of the presidential office. The Blue House is a symbol of South Korea, just like the White House is for the United States. He said that moving that symbol has caused the president's charisma to crumble since the beginning and has allowed the opposition party to start looking down on him. So, regardless of who the next president will be, it's said that they will return to the Blue House. No matter who becomes the next president, what's clear is this. Yes, won't be using the presidential office in Yongsan. I can say for sure this is the case. So, are we going to go back to the Blue House? What do you think? Yes, basically, the easiest and least costly option is to return to the Blue House. However, this also has its own issues. So, President Yoon Suk-yeol announced that he would leave the Blue House, which symbolizes imperial power, and directly stated in March 2022 that he would relocate from the Blue House in Jongno to Yongsan. So, in a way, the president made this decision unilaterally. So, the Yongsan presidential era is now over. It's over. It's over. Saying that we're in a crisis. So, the current issue is that in the political arena, there might be an early election, or there might not be one. There are still some administrative procedures left, and since a final decision hasn't been made yet, whether the presidential election will be held as scheduled in March 2027, or if the issue of relocating the presidential office in Yongsan will become a major point of contention. So, naturally, where the president's office will be located is bound to become a very important issue. So, already during the general election, April 10th, Han Dong-hoon, the emergency committee chairman of the People Power Party, made a pledge to completely relocate the National Assembly to Sejong City. Then, some factions of the opposition, including the Green Justice Party and the New Future Party, argue that not only should the National Assembly be moved to Sejong, but the presidential office must also be relocated there. And I support the constitutional amendment for the relocation of the administrative capital. So, that's what I've just talked about. So, I think this will become a very hot topic in the future. So, what surprised me a bit personally was that someone mentioned the idea of relocating the administrative capital. It was recently during a real estate market outlook lecture I had with someone named Elian. Right. Before the lecture started, Elian and I were chatting casually, and that's when he brought this up. I don't know who the next president will be, but if they use Yongsan or the Blue House, it might be awkward and we would need alternatives like Sejong City. If that happens, Sejong's real estate prices could rise again. Articles, including one from Daejeon Ilbo about a week and a half ago, suggest we open the Sejong era for the presidential office. There might be personal interests involved since Daejeon is near Sejong and their real estate markets are linked. If the presidential office opens in Sejong, Daejeon's market would also heat up. The era of the presidential office in Sejong is now an unavoidable topic. So, this is now appearing in the news, and I saw that the Daejeon Ilbo published a related article about a week and a half ago, suggesting that we should change the second office to a second office and open the Sejong era for the presidential office. Of course, there might be some personal interest involved, right? because Daejeon is right next to Sejong, and in the real estate market, Sejong and Daejeon can be seen as one entity. So, if the presidential office opens in Sejong, then naturally the real estate market in Daejeon would also get very hot. So, keep in mind that there might be some personal interests in this discussion. So, the era of the presidential office in Sejong is now emerging as an avoidable topic. That's because the Blue House has been completely opened up. So, there could be some issues with the supplement. And now, the Yongsan presidential office is a mess, right? It's controversial. There are kinds of things. Sejong City is being presented as an alternative, with the installation of the presidential office's second office on the horizon. So, Sejong is already preparing for the installation of the presidential office's second office, not the first office. So, the idea is to completely change the first office into an official office. So what this means is that it inevitably leads to the necessary procedure, constitutional amendment. We must end constitution. So the necessity for discussions at the National Assembly level is increasing, and related articles have been published by the Daejeon Ilbo about a week and a half ago. On January 1st, many newspaper articles on this topic started coming out. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport has been conducting a service since the end of June last month to promote integrated design international studies for the architectural design of the presidential office's second office and the urban design of the national symbolic area, starting from the end of June 2024. So, regarding the second office, it means that these things have already been in progress in Sejong City. So, if the Blue House is out of the picture and Yongsan is also out, then we have to go somewhere, right? We have to go somewhere, so let's just go to Sejong. So that's what I'm saying. So Sejong has no choice. To be the only option, this is the current situation. The completion date for the president's second office is in the second half of 2027. This won't happen quickly. It's going to be in the second half of 2027. Then, even if an early election is held and a new president is elected, it will be tough in the early days of their term, and they might only be able to use it in the middle of their term. So we need to push the construction schedule as far forward as possible. These kinds of discussions are happening right now, and now there are temporary offices and a National Assembly meeting room set up at the government Sejong complex. So there's also a plan to utilize those. President Yoon Suk-yeol promised bi-weekly Sejong cabinet meetings and to utilize the space, but this hasn't been followed through. The president's role should focus on South Korea's future and its people, not just the space. Visible aspects matter, but true commitment means prioritizing practical matters over space. The key question is whether Sejong can become the primary office and if constitutional amendments are needed. Of course, the visible aspects are important, but I personally think that if someone is truly dedicated to serving the country and its people, they should focus much more on practical matters rather than just the space. So, key issue here is whether Sejong can become the primary office instead of just a secondary one, and whether we can amend the constitution to make that happen. That is why the Constitutional Court's 2004 ruling of unconstitutionality on the Special Act on the construction of the new administrative capital, based on customary law, is said to be valid. So, since the location of the National Assembly and the President is a decisive factor in the ruling of unconstitutionality, the argument is that through a constitutional amendment, it should be clearly stated that Sejong City will be the administrative capital. So this is urgent, and that's the point. So it seems that in the future, discussions about the presidential office will continue to be a hot topic. So, what do you all think? There are three options. First, since it has been moved, let's just use Yongsan as it is. Second, let's move it to Cheongwadai. Third, since Yongsan is ambiguous and Cheongwadai is ambiguous, let's make Sejong City the administrative capital and move the president's first secretariat to Sejong City. I'm also curious about what you all think. I'll wrap up today's discussion here. Happy New Year to you all. I sincerely wish for all of you to be happy and blessed together in the year 2025. Thank you.